All right. And hello, everyone. I'm Michael Naylor, and I'm coming to you from South Portland, Maine, through the miracle of virtual reality, which is just a stunning mystery in my way of trying to comprehend anything. But nonetheless, I'm actually able to be here with Lindsey, and all beautiful and bright type 2, and she's going to guide us on her journey. And just just to let you know, I've been doing these for about 3 years, and they're just always for me so moving and deepening around understanding what goes on behind the scenes of the patterns. We get to listen to and hear the core soul of the type. So just thank you for being here. I really appreciate you being willing to come on and share your story. Beloved type 2ness, the agony, the ecstasy, the joy, the suffering, and all of everything in between. So maybe just start with with how you learned about it. When did it come through? A little tag in the cereal box. You open it up and it said, "You must read about the type 2." That's kind of like what my teacher did with me. But anyway,
It was actually the back of a milk carton that said missing person. And I was like, oh, I am looking for myself actually. So no,
yeah.
thanks for having me, Michael. I'm really delighted to be here and talking to you again. Um, so my Enneagram journey began, I guess, about 7 years ago.
Mm,
And I encountered the Enneagram in a spiritual setting. I was on a spiritual retreat with
mm,
my husband, and it was being led by Aaron Niequist. And he looked at me and he said, "What's your Enneagram number?" And I had been listening to people all weekend talk about their Enneagram numbers, and I felt very on the outside. I was having, severe what I call FOMO, fear of missing out, and I just needed more information so I could be on the inside of this thing. And that's kind of where it started, was just not wanting to miss out on something.
yeah.
And an opportunity for connection, I guess. So my husband ordered some tests for us, and that was a really wonderful experience. I feel like we encountered the Enneagram in a time when we where our hearts were really crying out for some resources and tools. And I
Mm,
firmly believe that the cries of our hearts were answered in many ways in that time. And one of the ways was this tool, the Enneagram. And so we had a really beautiful experience of clarity, and
mm,
also apologizing to one another,
mhm,
offering forgiveness to one another, because
mm,
finally things that we had been blaming each other for
mm,
and not understanding about each other started to become clear and make sense. And there was just this
mm.
overwhelming compassion
Wow, that's
for each
awesome.
other. So it
Mm,
was really beautiful.
mm. Very
And then
good.
I, I just pulled that thread. I read some books, and I
Mhm,
really was experiencing a lot of growth and beauty in my
mm,
own life. And so I just kept walking that path, pulling the thread, and it led me to Claire Lowridge in Marshall, Michigan, her training in the Harmony Triads.
mm.
So I went through that certification and got the Harmony Triads lens of the Enneagram, and
Awesome.
experienced a lot more transformation, and then decided that I wanted to try teaching this tool to other people.
Mm,
And what I found when I started doing that was that, as wonderful as the spiritual language was, that there were people who needed other language besides that for multiple reasons.
mhm,
And so my friend connected me with Mario Sikora and his awareness to action training. And so I
mhm,
felt like there were some more tools in my Enneagram toolbox, and some more vocabulary and language for being able to help the people that I was feeling drawn to help using the Enneagram. And fast forward, did some creative projects with the Enneagram, and met the Fathoms podcast guys, became acquaintances with them and
Mm.
hopped on as a guest to their podcast a couple times, and then was invited to be part of their creative process as a co-host of Fathoms. So that's where things are sitting for me now. I am continuing to learn and grow and doing some coaching and also co-hosting that podcast.
Awesome, awesome. And that's where I met you for the
Yes.
first time
Yes.
uh, during an interview. Um, so when you began learning about your type, what were the things that showed up for you that you went, oh, that's that's type two? I mean, what came to mind for you in the, in the beginning?
Can you repeat that question? Because you froze for me.
Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah. So when you first started, learning and discovering that you were a type two, um, what were the characteristics that stood out for you that you identified with?
It was multi-layered, and I feel like it still continues to unfold.
Hmm.
Um, when I went through the Harmony Triads training with Claire, it was this aspect of divine love,
Hmm.
sort of this
Hmm.
wholehearted giving
Hmm.
of oneself over to loving others, to loving the world, to this belief that if you and I can just get in a room together and look
Hmm.
each other in the eye and
Hmm.
remember our humanity, our shared humanity, and
Hmm.
find a space of love between us, then there is literally nothing that we can't fix, right?
Hmm.
So that was sort of my first awakening to that. And then when I went through Mario's training, there was another layer that sort of was uncovered with this. His phraseology around two-ness is striving to connect.
Hmm.
And so it's not just a love for others, but it's striving, whether unconsciously
Hmm.
um, or consciously, to be in close connection with others.
Hmm.
Sort of a
Wow.
defining feature of my waking and sleeping moments, whether I wanted to be or not.
Yeah. Well, and it's both. So for all the types in my experiences, it can be, it's like a double-edged sword. It's both a
Mm,
gift of the
yes.
two is to be able to connect with others on a real heart level and
Mm-hmm.
really be an instrument for compassion and unconditional loving kindness and just being in a sense kind of a beacon for that, not even necessarily having to take a certain action, but it's like the deep essential gift of the two. And then when our interesting personality gets involved,
Mm-hmm.
when we're not necessarily feeling the abundance of the heart, to
Mm-hmm.
might say that I start to feel maybe even a fear of losing connection, or something starts to feel less secure, and so I have certain things I do that are familiar to me based on my personality. My wife's a type two, so I might expect some over giving coming my way, or over compliments, like that's way too positive. I know you're a positive outcome, but that's like you just went over the moon on that one. So what did you notice about yourself?
Oh, everything you said about your wife, absolutely. It's interesting because my husband is a four, so I'm sure that we could have some really interesting conversations about that.
Yeah.
When you said the abundance of the heart, and
Mhm.
when that's not in place, that there's a fear.
Mm,
Oh, I felt the tears welling up in my eyes because that's
mm,
so true. That deeply resonated with me. And so
mm,
one of the practices that I've developed for myself is, like you said, there's just this natural inclination to reach out to people.
mm,
If I know someone is in need, or they just come to my mind, and I want to call them or send them a text message or something.
mhm.
There's beauty in that. There's
Yeah.
moments where people have responded and said, I felt absolutely alone today. And then your
Um,
text came through just saying, I'm just thinking about you.
yeah.
If you need anything, I'm here. I
Yeah.
care about you. And
Yeah.
it was profound and meaningful.
Mm,
And I've also experienced when someone comes to my mind and I realize that maybe I'm not sure where I sit with them.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what they think about me, if they
Mhm.
still like me, if they still admire me. We just haven't
Mhm.
talked in a while. And so then all of a sudden, before I realize it, the fear of losing the connection is happening. And then the motivation for reaching out to them is completely different.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
And so trying to notice, even if initially I'm maybe motivated by fear, it doesn't mean I shouldn't reach out. It
Yeah.
just means
Right.
I need to be aware that I'm caring for, like you said, and I'm gonna play with that language a little bit. The abundance of the heart. Because
Mhm.
I feel like if I'm coming from a place of fear, then that's not living from a place of abundance. That's living from a place of I'm running out. I'm
Yeah.
running out of connection. I'm running out of love. I need to secure it quickly, right?
Yeah.
That's not the kind of energy I want to be in the world. That's not the kind of energy I want to bring to others. And so even if that I initially say, oh, I'm feeling some fear about this connection here, maybe there's a way I can resolve that within myself
Mhm.
and reconnect to the abundance
Yeah.
and
Well,
and then decide.
it seems like it's also like a radar. So
Mm,
um, my wife is very aware of the subtleties of when I'm distant.
mhm,
And she'll say, "Are you okay?" And of course, I'll say, "Yeah, I'm fine." Uh,
mm.
Really? I said, "Yeah. The only thing that's bothering me right now is you. Other than
You're
that, it's all
asking
good."
me if I'm fine. Yeah.
But she's
Oh,
sensing
so true.
something that I haven't shared, and so so that kind of noticing a disconnect between her heart and my heart, that's a healthy thing to recognize.
Mm,
It's when it gets uh, too magnified over things that aren't maybe that significant that it becomes challenging.
mhm,
And I think every choose based on their childhood, you can have a big abandonment pattern or a small one. And I know in her case, she went through terrible suffering as a kid, so that abandonment button can be available under
mhm.
stress. And being a type 4 in my patterns, and maybe just as blind as can be, I can just start poking those buttons, and she starts emitting, cries for help, and I'm going, why don't you just chill out, right? It's like, no, no one's ever chilled out by being told to chill out, right? But
Yeah.
anyway, so what do you notice for you around that, maybe even that rejection button,
Mm,
or the fragility of it from time to time?
mm. Ooh, that hits a tender spot for sure.
Hmm.
Um, so I will say that I have wonderful parents,
Hmm.
absolutely wonderful. I always felt very loved as a child.
Hmm.
And I also internalized a belief um, that I was too much,
Hmm.
that my
Hmm.
emotions were too much, that my uh,
Hmm.
drama or expression, uh, being a demonstrative person made people around me uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And as an adult, I've had enough experience with other adults now to say a lot of adults are really uncomfortable with their big feelings. And
Hmm. Hmm.
so I can sort of go back to my childhood and say, I internalized something, a message that it wasn't a me problem.
Hmm.
It was, here's a child with big feelings, and maybe I'm a grown up who doesn't know entirely how to validate that
Hmm.
in the way that they need. And
Hmm.
now all of a sudden, I'm a little girl and I'm taking care of the grown ups' feelings around me,
Hmm. Yeah.
because making them uncomfortable on a very real level risked my very survival. I intuited that.
Yeah.
But on an emotional level, I sensed that their discomfort meant rejection for me. And I
Yeah.
wanted to keep them close. And so the best way to do that was to make them comfortable. And that meant really tamping down, my expression.
Yeah.
So I find that story has replayed itself over and over and over in friendships, and being vulnerable in my marriage. I mean, it's so true. I read my husband's face, his eyes, the way he's holding his mouth. his posture, his tone of voice, everything. And if the stars do not align, I am like, you're mad at me, aren't you? I'm sure
Yes.
you're mad at me. And
Yes.
it has led to so much unnecessary arguing. And we're
Uh-huh.
getting better at resolving those things quickly.
Mhm.
But as you know, a 2 and a 4, like emotions
Mhm.
run high. And
Yes.
so sometimes it is taking a long time to be able to say, okay, here's what I'm feeling, and
Mm.
here's why.
Mhm.
And why don't you offer me an alternative way of seeing what's happening right
Oh,
now?
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's very
and
skillful.
and also being able to say, no, that was rude. You could have done that better. And my feelings are completely valid. Like, work on your affect,
Yes,
which
yes.
after 16 years of being married, we can sort of joke that way a little bit
Mhm.
more easily now,
Yeah,
and have a sense of humor about our hangups. And that
that's
helps a lot.
awesome. Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think that, the skill, I call it an intuitive skill of the two, is to really be able to sense the emotional atmosphere of others.
Mm-hmm.
And and then the question is, well, what do I do with that, right? Um, and uh, and is it pressing my abandonment button? Like, uh, is this serious? How serious is this?
Mm-hmm.
And just sort of noticing, even where, like I know with Donna, you know, twos are so positive. I can walk in the door after being gone, and it's like she's seeing me for the first time in her life, and she's so glad to see me. And I'm like, in my sort of internal foolishness, thinking about, heavy things and thoughts, and I'll say, she says, "Oh, it's good to see you," and I go, "Yeah," and I'll walk to my room, and she'll come. I hear these feet thudding towards me, and go,
Uh-huh.
"Oh, something's going on." She'll say, "Are you mad at me?" I say,
Yeah.
"I'm not mad at you, but I think if we keep this conversation going, I could work it up. I mean,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
there's no battle going on here." So, but on other times, like you just did, if she sees that I'm being foolish, rude, or asleep, she'll
Mm-hmm.
go, "That's really messed up. You got to work on that." I go, "Thank you, thank you." And
Thank
that's
you.
different. Yeah, it's direct now. There was a time when maybe she'd say, "Are you hungry? I'll get you some food," when I was being strange, right? But now it's
Mm-hmm.
direct. So, um, yeah. So the sensitivity. Um, I was reading something by Byron Katie, who a friend of mine is close to her and said she is a type 2, and she said that learning to sense the field of others, but not take on their suffering,
Mm.
is a great a gift you can give them. That even just being present with their suffering without taking an action transmits something that's healing, whether it's hopeful or loving kindness. And he said, otherwise, if you take on their suffering, then both of you are suffering. And what's the point of that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But this whole idea that I don't, I know twos are very sensitive and, can feel the suffering of others. And then the challenge is, how do I not then have it stick to the root of my soul for the rest of the day, right? And feel the
Yeah.
grief. And so I wonder what has been helpful for you in, not taking it so deep, or, what are the different ways you've experienced it?
Yes. Oh, I love this question. There's a couple answers coming to mind. One of them is uh, when it comes to my husband, because I know him, I tell myself, if he's mad at me, he'll tell me. If he's mad at me, I'll know. And then I just try to leave it at that. And sometimes I find myself moving toward, and that's hard, because when you've got someone who moves toward and someone who's withdrawing, it's like, okay, which of us are going to get our needs met here? We got to like figure this out.
Mhm.
But reminding myself that um, he will tell me if he's mad at me, and I can sort of conserve some energy
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And take a deep breath and notice my even thinking about it right now, Michael, my shoulders are getting tense. My heart rate is quickening. So that fear of like, you are leaving me
Yes.
and I will
Yeah.
be alone and I will be unloved.
Yeah.
Um, is
Yeah.
so I feel it in my body, even just imagining that scenario.
Yeah.
So that's real loving myself by just taking a deep breath, reminding my nervous system I actually am safe. I'm
Mm.
physically safe. I'm also safe in this relationship.
Yeah.
The connection is not at risk.
Yeah.
It changes how I behave after that. It
Yeah.
changes the actions I take. The second thing is that thinking about striving to connect and going through awareness to action, I was asked a lot in that training to think about the stories I'm telling myself.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the stories I tell myself around connection is that in order to have connection, I have to pursue.
Mm-hmm.
And when I really ask myself, is that story true? What does connection really mean to me?
Mm.
And in my definition of what healthy connection looks like, am I always supposed to pursue the other person?
Mm-hmm.
No. So, what I actually want is connection that is reciprocal. And if I am always making the choice to pursue preemptively to make sure the connection is secured, then
Mm.
I don't have the kind of connection I'm actually seeking. I've got something more like codependency, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well,
so yeah,
it's so again these patterns seem to it seems that we inherit them regardless necessarily of how difficult our childhoods are. And, type twos often say that the connection I had with my husband or wife today in the morning, I got to check and see if it's still there. There's something
yeah.
in me that wants to, are we still good? Or, I'm checking to see if you're, indifferent or whatever. And it's just like having a little creature inside that's going, okay, this could be the day you get abandoned. I'm just
Mm,
telling, so keep your eyes open. Uh, and then that other piece that you mentioned, which is, if he's mad at me, he'll tell me.
mhm.
Those are like my identical words to Don. I promise you, if I'm upset with you, I will tell you. At least 99% of the time, right?
Yeah.
And so, learning to trust that, I can count on that. And then, how do I soothe myself when that other little inner critic's going, oh no, you can't believe that, because at your core, according to Enneagram folklore, you're a rejection type, and that's your big wound, and it's just going to experience it again. So you better hover close by, at least within arm length,
Mm,
or if you can slide your whole being into his front pocket, you'll be okay. Then
mhm.
he won't get away. But so that's I think it's these kinds of processes are so mysterious in a certain way. You've been together for 16 years, and then noticing, oh, certain little things can trigger, and now I'm
Mhm.
wondering. And so, how do you and your husband work through that? Like, what? How does he respond as a type 4? If you don't mind saying, I can interview him later, and we'll get
Yeah.
the whole
Oh,
story.
he'd love that.
Oh,
Um,
awesome.
um, I find that if I am willing to let him go, that's for my benefit too.
Yeah.
Because he needs space. He just needs space to get his head clear, to calm his body and his emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and then he will come back. He'll return when
Mm-hmm.
he's ready. Or, if it's really, really bugging me, I can just be like, hey, are you ready? Do you need some more time? Do a little check in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that we're trying really hard, and I've seen him over 16 years just grow so much in his capacity to meet me where I'm at. And so he's learned language of like, instead of storming out of the room,
Mm-hmm.
that's a huge trigger for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what triggers do. You find yourself wailing, me at least, being vulnerable here in the earlier years of marriage. It's like
Yeah.
crying, begging, please don't go. And then that makes him want to go even more, and it's just that dance that we can fall into so easily, but it's because it's a trigger. And the next thing you know, something's happening and you're a little bit out of control of it
Hmm.
because you're just functioning out of fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for us, him learning to say, I need to walk away and I
Hmm.
love you,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
we're okay, but I need time.
Yeah.
Something like that. It's
Yeah.
so reassuring.
Yeah.
And I will give him all the time he needs.
Awesome.
That's, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a great for to dance together because
Mhm.
um, it seems to be one of the pivotal things. The two gets triggered and starts coming at the four. The four is going, "What is going on here?"
Yeah.
And then it's like, "You're not trusting me. I can't deal with this.
Yeah.
I gotta go." And then the two goes, "Oh my God, certain death and annihilation. I'm
Yeah.
chasing you now. You cannot get away." And it just has, and then we sort of go into our less healthy selves and our little kids who were felt insecure. But the good news, and it sounds like with your husband, is for us it rarely happens. I will say it happens. Seems like once a year we'll still have some little return to Armageddon and
Yep. A
go,
big one.
oh yeah, this is, I remember how much I hate this.
Yeah.
There we are, we're still human.
Yeah.
So but yeah, that's a powerful thing.
Yeah, it was so funny. Just last week we had this moment, we're trying to communicate about things, and kids are going back to school, and communication is not going as efficiently as we wanted. And I got my feelings hurt about something, and I'm trying to make the commitment that I won't let my overwhelm of emotions
Hmm.
derail
Hmm.
a conversation. So I can say, okay, that feeling is valid, but I'm going to just put that on pause, and I
Mm.
want to finish what the task is that we're trying to accomplish, the objective. As a
Yeah.
team, we're trying to get this done.
Yeah.
And then I can say, hey, when you said this, it hurt or whatever. But in that moment, it was like I was just stunned. I was stunned. I was hurt. And I just said, I'm hurt. I don't think I can move past this right now. And
Hmm.
so some other things were said, and he left
Hmm.
the porch, and I thought, I'm okay. It was
Awesome.
maybe one of the first times that my first thought was, I'm okay. We're okay.
That's great.
And it was a couple minutes. He came back out onto the porch, and he just kind of looked at me, and I just kind of looked at him, and
Oh,
I said, I know, I know.
that's
And
awesome.
he said, I'm sorry. And I didn't mean to hurt you. And then it was done. It was done. And I'm thinking back to early marriage days of stalemate, where
Yeah.
neither
Yeah.
of us willing to budge. And it's refreshing to see that growth. And I also want to highlight a thing that I find myself doing in relationships, not just with him, but with others, is uh, for twos, I think learning to pay attention to our body's cues can help us
Mm.
so much. And
Mm.
so I can feel, he has big feelings. And so when I am feeling my energy moving toward him to fix it for
Mm.
him,
Mhm.
because I don't like to see him upset. I don't like to see him frustrated. He's perfectly fine being upset and frustrated. Like, I don't know, don't fix it. I want to feel it. And so I feel my energy going toward him in that way. And just something practical that I try to do. This may be woo woo for some people, but I will try to call my energy back to me
Mhm.
internally. Just say, no, no,
Mhm.
no. Like, little chickens getting away, or little baby kittens or something. Like, no,
Yeah.
no, just come back. And then I imagine
Mm.
myself in kind of a clear bubble where
Mm.
I'm still able to see what's going on. I'm still able to be present and feel,
Mm.
with the person across from me. But it does feel like there's a boundary there so that my energy can't escape me without me saying, okay, let's move forward in this compassionate way. Or
Yeah.
it's time. This person is actually asking for your help. You can move forward. But
Mhm.
otherwise, it's like, okay, just be here and notice, and hold on to this energy.
Well, it sounds like that practice really slows down the sort of automatic response. Somehow
Absolutely.
it quiets it or restrains it or brings some kind of objectivity to
Hmm.
your awareness. And, I know that in our relationship, for a number of years, if Donna was hurt, it would be instant tears, right? It's
Hmm.
just like, and then it took her a while to learn to like not just sort of melt down and stay focused and kind of grounded in what's really going on, and that's been really huge for her. But
Hmm.
along the way, she had to endure a lot of those moments of meltdown and then bringing herself back and then trying to discover, what did she want and noticing she had gotten really attuned to what I wanted. So how do I, separate that out so that I exist here in this relationship? And it's taken a number of years, but it seems to be the growth path for the two, and especially in relationship to the four.
Yeah.
Um, so do you notice? Have you noticed that your sense of humor around these sort of dynamics has expanded? So that you can laugh at it sometimes and go, when I get triggered, watch out, or whatever
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And I remember my husband used to say that to me. He used to say, I just wish you'd be able to laugh at yourself about this. And I'm like, that hurts my feelings. The opposite impact, you know. But yeah, at some point we realized that we can both be very heavy individuals,
Hmm.
and we were really missing levity in our relationship, like it was in the beginning when you're first sort of encountering someone and it's amazing and you're falling in love and all of that. And then we just did a deep dive like immediately. And
Hmm.
there was, other things going on, becoming parents, encountering trauma together, sort
Hmm.
of trying to figure out our own individual trauma. Now we're married and we also have collective trauma we're going through and experiencing. And it's a lot, life is a lot. Life is a lot.
It is.
And we really forgot how to embrace the levity for a while, for a
Hmm.
season. And I'm really, really grateful that we are laughing more
That's awesome. That's
and
awesome.
dancing more and finding each other hilarious. And
It's great. Well, it's so powerful
yeah.
to be able to blend them. And so for you, just thinking of some of the themes that sometimes twos have worked with or struggled with is, call the passion pride, right? Like,
Mm.
uh, might show up as, I take pride in the fact that I know what you need. If you just listen to me, you'd have a better life. Or
Mhm.
you've got needs. I don't have any. I am good to go, but I'm here for you. And those are sort of the extremes of when I'm not present. So what has been your relationship with this passion of pride? How would you describe your growth and maturation?
Oh, well, being totally honest, I still really have a hard time seeing my pride.
Hmm.
And I've grown a lot in that capacity. I was very, very blind to it. Even working with the Enneagram, I often wondered, am I just a different number? Because I don't see pride here. I don't see it.
Yeah.
And when people said, oh, no, 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 that's normal for twos, then I was like, okay, I guess I just am a two. But yeah, I'm still working with that. I find that um, something that's been humbling for me is
Mhm.
realizing that I can't even tell you sometimes what I like. I'm a 36-year-old woman,
Mhm.
and my own preferences are kind of fuzzy to me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when people say, well, what do you do for fun, or what are your hobbies, or what do you like? And I can't always answer that question.
Yeah.
I think that that's a humbling experience to realize,
Yeah.
wow, you can tell someone what these other significant people in your life like, and you don't know yourself.
Yeah.
And you're scared to find out. You're scared to be alone
Hmm.
and explore yourself. I was telling a friend the other day, like, I feel like there's this, I'm looking at a map of myself, and there is this terrain that I've sketched out and I understand it. And then there's like the westward expansion. It's like a completely blank slate. I
Mm-hmm.
have no idea what's over there. As
Mm-hmm.
far as I'm concerned, there's just like lions and bears and scary things, and I just don't want to go there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so for me, I feel like that's been a really humbling that has cultivated a lot of humility in me.
Yeah. Well, again, it's the automatic pilot of the personality is so compelling that, it's the automaticity is that I go and I know what you need, and I know what you need, and I love loving you, and I love being able to see that and help you. And oh my word, you can't feel what I like or want.
Mm-hmm.
What's that all about? Like
Yeah.
how did that happen? And I can recall with my wife when we had want to, maybe go out to dinner, I'd say, where would you like to eat? And she'd say, well, where would you like to eat? I said,
Mm-hmm.
no, where would you, Donna, in this moment, like to eat? And she'd say,
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea. I said, okay, all right, I hear you, and then over time, it's like, okay, let's go to that restaurant. She'd say, no way, I'm not going to that one. I got a bad feeling about it. We're going to this one. And go, all right, that's,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
no, it takes time.
Yeah, it
So,
does.
yeah.
I found that it takes time, you know, practicing solitude is really hard for me. And I've discovered that if I'm going to have solitude, it's got to be long enough that it gets uncomfortable and scary. And that's usually after I've been alone for an hour. That feels great. I've got
Oh, good.
my thoughts back to myself.
Yeah.
I'm doing something that I want to do, or listening to music or podcast or something that I want to. But then when I turn everything off and I get quiet and still and I'm alone, I'm
Mm-hmm.
scared and I feel unsure.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the moment when I'm actually making contact with myself.
Yeah.
But I have to be willing to stay there
To
long
wait
enough
for
to
it.
reach that point.
Well, hang on just a second. The sun is so bright that it's blinding me. So
You're just
when you,
glowing.
yeah, it's my guardian angels trying to assist me before I go off the rails. So when you experience that sort of fear that comes up after you've, had that hour, and then it starts to leak forward, do you have a sense of what that fear is about? Is it an inner critic voice going, you're being selfish? Is it, oh, you're in the great unknown, and this is where you dissolve into the universe? Or, I mean,
Mm,
what do you notice?
yeah, I have noticed that part of it is somewhat practical because there's a fear that if no one can get in touch with me and something happens
Oh, yeah,
with my kids,
yeah.
like that's I don't want to be in that situation. So
Hmm.
having a setup where if there's an emergency, people can get in touch with me, but I also can't be interrupted unless there's an emergency. Like that's the situation I have to set up for myself. So there's a little bit of a practical fear there just as a mom, but I think on a deeper level the fear of um it's kind of hard to say out loud actually.
Hmm.
Um if I'm gone and no one actually needs me while I'm gone,
Hmm.
what does that mean for me?
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and of course, I know the instinctive responses to that,
Hmm.
but it doesn't change like the underlying uh, reality that that fear exists. That
Yeah.
if they don't need me,
Mm.
I am. So
Mm.
intentionally putting myself in a situation where people aren't
Don't,
needing me
yeah.
it's activating that fear on
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. What a interesting thing to explore.
Mm.
That it's like this sort of deep core fear that if I'm not needed, what does that mean? Am I not loved? Am I? Uh, and and that seems strong. And too, as I know, my wife will often say, do you even need me? I said, well, it's not about needing you. Of course. I mean, you love me dearly, and that, you opens my heart, and it's just been a great contribution. But I don't feel a need around it necessarily. And she'd go, okay, because she'll say, when I don't feel needed, like the kids are all grown, and sometimes they don't seem like they need me. And I said, well, they still need you, but it's really good. They're independent. And it's like there's this sense of, this perilous territory that I'm dropping into. So I imagine, you'll have a great project of just stepping into it and putting your toes in it and touching the water and coming out again. And it may just be how your hard wiring is. I mean, but it seems like it surrounds also just, again, it's like another facet of, I want to feel connected and in communion with people.
Mm-hmm.
And anything that looks like it is shaking that up, which is, I think, is a really healthy and beautiful quality. But it's like when the fear comes in, it's like, oh my God, this could be like the death of me, or
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
so that delicate heart speaks to you.
My
Yeah.
husband said to me before we ever even encountered the Enneagram, we were in a fight. And I remember him he feels a little bad when I tell this story, but I'm so endeared to him
Mm.
from this moment because initially it stung, but he said the perfect thing because he said, I don't need you. I want you. I'm choosing you.
Yeah.
And I think that that really is what twos desire more than being needed is to know that we're wanted.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but we just have funky ways of going about securing those connections sometimes.
Yeah. Well, we're human beings, just
Yeah.
learning the next lesson of humility right around the corner, and we go deeper each time. So you mentioned your kids. My experience with twos is they really love their families, and I wondered if that two-ish part of you comes through with your love of your kids and your husband, and just how you experience that.
Mm, yeah. And I think that the Enneagram has helped me to really think about the patterns that I want to develop with my kids
Mm-hmm.
and start that and seeing how they're different from each other. Um,
Mm-hmm.
allows me to engage them in ways that they need me to engage them, which is a skill that I have. And it's also really hard. It's hard for me because, for example, my oldest son, he's 12. He displays a lot of five-ish tendencies, and I don't want to put that on him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he does have a lot of those characteristics and features, and so learning to remember that my connection with him is strong, even when he wants privacy and even when he wants to not tell me everything he's thinking. Um, you know, that learning to respect his need in that way has ultimately caused him to feel really safe with me. And so when he does open his heart to
Mm-hmm.
me and he does open his mind to me, I know he's choosing that.
Yeah.
And he's not, and that is the kind of connection that feels so sweet to me.
Beautiful.
And I love my daughter. She triggers me a lot because she is wild and free in a way that I wish I was,
Mm-hmm.
and so observing her and being able to cheer her on,
Mm-hmm.
even though I'm like, oh, you're making me so uncomfortable right now because it's like, people are not gonna like you if you do that, or you're we had an issue this morning with what she was wearing, and I was like, if you're comfortable potentially getting in trouble for breaking the school dress code, go for it. My advice is to take a backup pair of clothes, and but I feel like if I didn't have that awareness to go, she needs self-expression, and she
Mhm.
needs to not have me hovering and making these choices for her,
Mhm.
thinking I know what's best for her. Maybe she will learn best with getting in trouble today. I don't know, but I know that for our relationship, it's not going to be good for me to force this,
Yeah.
and my youngest senses me and feels me very deeply, and
Mm.
he is starting to check in with my feelings and try to
Mm.
take care of my feelings, and
Oh.
he's 8 years old, and so the message to him is consistently like, your voice matters,
Mm.
and I'm a grown up and I take care of my feelings. You do not have to bear that burden,
Mm.
And so being
Mm.
able to even see him
Mm.
reflect some of those things I noticed in myself as a child and say the things to him that I needed to hear as a child,
Yeah.
is
Beautiful.
really, really lovely. And
Beautiful. Yeah. So you
yeah,
have three
it's
kids.
interesting. Three. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm chuckling because our oldest, my son's a type 5, and he treasures his solitary life. And
Yeah.
I remember we would occasionally have to interrupt. He would merge with the computer and not come out for 4 or 5 days, and I'd
Yeah.
say, "Are you in there, Christian? You mind if I hug you? Just a
Yeah.
hug, just one hug." And say, "Okay, go ahead," and we'll get a hug.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just the difference in types. It's so awesome that you're able to discern that and notice. I use the word hovering, and I think my wife with my daughter, who's a pretty rambunctious type 9 adventurer,
Mm.
laid back, peaceful, but loves adventure. It's like Donna's like, "Oh my God, should I call her? Do you think I should warn her?" I said, "I don't really think you should. She's actually grown up now, and she knows what she's doing. She's great." But occasionally
Yeah.
she'll say, "Mom, you're hovering over me. I just
Mm.
feel like, I need some space." But it's all from that place of, I don't want you to suffer. And
Mhm.
but it's an interesting thing to be able to speak about out loud, because she's a 2. Chloe knows she's a 2. Chloe's a 9. She needs space, no intrusion, and the whole understanding of really the practical stuff of the Enneagram really makes a difference in the
It really
relationships.
does.
So it's
Oh,
quite
it
a
helps
blessing.
so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So do you have are you a 2 with a 1 wing, or is it
You know,
split?
it feels really split to me. My mom is a 1. And so sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I'm actually a 1 wing or if I just was raised by a 1.
Yeah.
And those things are sort of ingrained in me sometimes, but I think I might be more of a 3 wing at this point in my life. I
Hmm.
don't know.
Hmm.
I don't really know about all that,
Yeah. Okay.
but
Well, there's plenty of time, and you come to it when you're ready for it. There's
yeah,
enough to keep us busy until the next lifetime. So,
yeah.
uh, just a question for you. If you were talking to little Lindsay when she was growing up, um, what kind of support would you be giving her?
Mm. This is a really interesting question because I actually just had a really lovely chat with little Lindsay a couple of weeks ago.
Hmm.
And I was listening to a meditation, and it was, a childhood wounds meditation. And so we were
Hmm.
invited to have a conversation with our younger self. And I saw myself, and I saw some things in that time that I hadn't seen before very clearly.
Hmm.
And I felt the sting of what was happening at just the tender age of 3 years old.
Hmm.
And one moment in particular that I don't know if it was a memory I actually have or if I just remember seeing my third birthday party on a camcorder at one point. And so
Hmm.
I remember this, and I
Hmm.
remember seeing the look on my face watching this video back. And I was able to articulate to myself, um, in that moment, it escaped my lips before I could even realize it. But I said out loud, "Oh, you were just trying to tell the truth."
Mm,
And
mm,
what I meant when I said that to myself was, you were just trying to tell the truth about literally what was happening, but also the truth about your need to be seen and validated in that moment.
mm.
You
Yeah,
needed
yeah.
someone to see you and
Mm,
say what you're feeling is okay.
yeah.
And there are a lot of ways that I stopped telling the truth
Hmm.
because moments like that,
Mm,
no one caught it. No one saw what was happening and didn't
yeah,
know that I needed that. So I
yeah,
was able to say to myself, you were just trying to tell the truth.
yeah.
And that's good and that's okay. So tell
Mm,
the truth.
beautiful. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, one thing that we sometimes joke about with twos is that in the beginning of their unfoldment, they discover that sometimes they can be indirect about asking for things.
Yeah.
And, whether it's my beloved wife sending me 25 uh, greeting cards at a workshop to remind me, hey, why don't you call me up and ask me how I'm doing? I'm a slow
Oh,
learner, right? But I can remember all these cards showing up, and the women were going, oh my God, this is amazing. She sent you all these cards. And I'm going, oh, there's a message in here for me. I'm a little bit dense, so thank you for your noticing what I'm asleep to. But
oh,
so, how did you notice indirectness? That's something that resonates for you?
absolutely. Yeah. Because I'm always wanting to keep the space between us good
Yes.
and positive, and I
Hmm.
never want to hurt your feelings. I never want to make you mad at me. So my husband has observed that I will often ask a question to him as a way of indirectly saying what I want. So I might say, a simple example is like, "Are you hungry?" Instead of just saying, "I'm hungry, let's come up with a plan for dinner." Um, or uh yeah, and it could be more complicated than that, but
Hmm.
that's often one tactic that I notice in myself is if I'm asking a question,
Hmm.
usually means I need to rethink about it and say
Yeah.
it as a statement because there's
Yeah.
something I need or want that I just need to be forthright about.
Yeah. I'm chuckling because I've experienced that many, many times where Donna will say, are you hungry? I go, it's a great mystery. What about you? Oh, I am hungry. Oh, forget about you. I'm going to go eat, right? But
Yeah.
for years, she would like keep prodding so she could then have permission. But it's gotten more direct. It's quite something to see that sort of turnaround. But that I think there's something about for twos because they're so sensitive to when they're hurt and how painful it is that
Mm.
they're extra considerate of other people. They don't want anybody to experience that suffering that they experience, which is really compassionate. Uh, but can be a problem when you just want to go ask, let's eat. I'm going to have hamburgers. What would you like, hon? Or whatever it is you eat. So it's just an interesting thing to navigate, and how you navigate your sensitivity and your vulnerability. So sounds like you've just done a lot of beautiful growth, and I really appreciate your transparency. That's one thing about twos I've noticed with my wife. Transparent, tell you what's going on. There's a deep humility in there also. Just I would call it, okay, we're all neurotic in our own way, right? But there's a kind of right sizeness, and just trying to keep loving kindness in the air, and try not to be a schmuck if you can help it. And I'll then feel pride about the fact that you're so slow at your learning. I just here to help you learn. But just I really appreciate the way you engage and speak your truth, and really there's a real invitation to respond in the same way, which is just such a beautiful quality of the twos. I know my kids adore Donna, and I often think of type 2 moms as being the crown jewel in the motherhood department, because of their deep care and concern. So that said, I wonder if there's anything that you haven't got to talk about that's sort of dear to your heart and your patterns, or that you'd like to share before we close for the time being?
Yeah, and I'm a music teacher, and my husband just arrived to teach some music lessons. So I'm so sorry to be reaching the end of our time before you start hearing like drums. But
Yeah, awesome.
one thing I wanted to mention, I thought, was how a lot of literature, encourages twos to say no more often and practice resisting helping if you're not truly needed.
Hmm.
And one thing I've always wondered is, okay, well, when you start doing that, that's great, but how do you deal with the shame and disappointment that you feel after you've chosen to say no?
Yeah.
And I've had to explore and navigate that, uh,
Mm, mm,
uh,
mm,
sort of by trial and error. And
mhm,
one thing that I'm finding really helpful for myself in navigating disappointment, whether it's I haven't met someone else's expectations of me,
mm,
or they haven't met my unspoken expectations,
mhm,
is just reminding myself that I am capable of meeting my own needs in a lot of ways that I just tend to outsource to other people.
mm,
And if I stop and I actually ask myself, am I able to meet this need for myself
mm,
in a way that will sort of mitigate that feeling of being disappointed in somebody else later
mhm,
on?
mhm.
Then what I've done is I've preemptively filled my cup
Awesome.
so that then what others are offering to me is just in it's over, my cup is now overflowing,
Beautiful.
instead of, well, that was just a drop in the bucket, that wasn't the love that I needed. you know I've already filled myself up with love. I've already
Yeah.
thought about what I needed. I've already met as many of those needs as I could. And
Mm,
so now what you're offering me, I can really receive it. I'm not
beautiful.
feeling disappointed. I'm feeling like, oh, you are overflowing my cup, you know?
Awesome.
And that's so I've been exploring disappointment in particular lately. Um, and that is kind of one of the things that's emerging. It's been really
Mhm.
powerful.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That is powerful and very, a great teaching for the type two. So just want to thank you for all the beautiful teaching moments that you've shared with us. They're so valuable. And I'm sure other twos will really appreciate hearing from you and probably even contact you. But yeah, thank you so much. And looking forward to
Mm,
connecting again down the road, and just
yeah.
many blessings to you.
Thank you. You too, Michael. Thank you so much.
Yeah.